I grow in 4 major mediums. I grow in light expanded clay aggregate, also known as LECA. Most of my LECA is in the format known as semi-hydroponics. I also grow in 100% pure sphagnum moss. Some of my orchids are in a bark mix, which is 1 part perlite, 1 part sphagnum moss to 4 parts fir bark. I either mix my own or I buy it from a local orchid grower, Hauserman's in Villa Park. And finally, I grow my orchids mounted on either cork, ceramic, wood, or plastic. This video is going to be about growing in light expanded clay pellets, LECA, in the format known as semi-hydroponics. So everything that I've ever done with semi-hydroponics, I learned off Ray Barcolow's website, First Rays. I've been growing in semi-hydroponics for my cattleyas for almost 15 years now, maybe more, but at least 15 years. And I've come up with a lot of ways to do it well, and a lot of ways where I know it doesn't work as well, but I still do it because of events beyond my control. Like right here, there's a cat about to eat my plants. Stop that, Pinto. Stop it, stop it, stop it. All right, so I get cat damage and I get pot damage. And right here is what I mean when I say pot damage. So the first thing about semi-hydroponics is that you can't buy commercial pots for it. You have to make your own. And it took me quite a while to figure out exactly what kind of pots to use, what kind of pots to get. I've gone through a lot of different types of plastic, and I'm going to go through that first. The LECA is really easy. You know, you just buy it and then you wash it. So really it comes down to potting things correctly and at the right time of year to grow successfully in the semi-hydroponic format. So let me start first with pots. All right, so containers for growing in semi-hydroponics. When I first started out, I bought pots from Ray, from First Rays, and I don't know if he sells these anymore. Or actually, I guess this was partway in. I needed larger containers, but I did try ones from Fray's, and I'm not sure exactly what kind of plastic it is, but these don't last. So after a few years, I want to say these last about 2 or 3 years when I use them, and then they just crumble. They just completely collapse, and then I need to basically get a new pot. So they look like this when they crumble. So this right here is a pot that I got from First Rays. I don't even know where the holes are. Here the holes are. And I can tell it's one of his because it has pre-punched holes, and I always melt my holes in with a hot nail. And so it does this right on the side here. So you see right here where it's basically breaking and it just comes apart. And I have other video where I've gone through and shown just how the pots collapse from UV exposure. But the First Rays pots really just don't last. I mean, no plastic really lasts when exposed to UV for long periods of time, but the First Rays ones were really, really short. And so after I tried them out, I decided that I really didn't like them, and I switched to other types of plastic. All right, so what kind of plastic did I switch to? So right here I have basically deli containers. I've gotten these from a variety of different restaurant supply shops and Amazon. The smallest size that I use is actually a 16-ounce drinking cup. This is a solo drinking cup, and I've found through experimentation that the clear plastic ones, with or without decoration, work the best. So you can also get those semi-translucent solo cups, and those don't last. So they're about 2 years of plastic crumbles on the translucent one. But these clear ones really do last. I do eventually crack them, but Some of these cups, like this one, you can tell it's clouded at the bottom because I've actually gone in and scrubbed the algae off of it, and I'm going to use it again. These last, probably 5 or more years. So I can use them a really, really long time. And you can see here that I've gone in and put holes, and I make most of my holes about 1 inch off from the bottom. I don't do that 1/3 size thing because I found that if you do the 1/3 and you have a really big container, it's just too much water. The next size that I have is your standard deli takeout container. That's 32 ounces. I got this from a local Chicago. I bought it bulk. Actually, for a long time, I just converted. I would get soup. I would get Chinese takeout, get like egg drop soup or any kind of soup, and I would convert the containers. But unfortunately, I didn't drink that much takeout soup. So eventually I did buy these bulk. What I don't like about buying them bulk is that it's cheaper to buy them with lids, and I don't use the lids, and so it feels like a real waste of plastic. But again, you can see the holes right here are about 1 inch from the bottom, and I make this myself. And this one is, I think, it's from a local supply store in Chicago called Schweppes, which may or may not exist anymore. Just drove there and I looked on the shelves until I found some. So this one is a 64 ounce, like ice cream size container, like if you're buying sherbet. It works okay. What I don't like about basically going, so this is off Amazon. What I don't like about going to Amazon is that you go, you look at the photos and you think, okay, that's the right shape. This is the right shape that I want. It's 64 ounces. Is it big enough? And what I find is that it's this is a little shallow. So if you look at, here's the 32, here's the 64, you see it's lower. So it's a little shallow. I would like a little bit taller container. And so I went back to Amazon and I got this one right here. So you can see it's much taller. And this is let me pull the sticky note out of it, 128 ounce deli food storage container. And I've really found that these food quality plastic containers they're thicker, right? So you can sometimes get those almost transparent deli containers from the deli. And I found that those actually don't last as long. So these last longer. I get around 5 years on these. This, again, nothing lasts forever, but these food quality ones last a lot longer than like this. And I don't know why. I don't know why, but if you look at it just slightly, right, this is a little bit like whiter than this. So I think it's slightly from plastic. Plastic comes in polystyrene, polyvinyl, and polypropylene. And I don't actually know which type of plastic this is, but just some plastics just aren't, they just don't hold up as well, right? The polymers don't bind the same way, and they're just more susceptible to UV damage, and UV makes it brittle, and then they just break. All right, the majority of my LECA is actually Hydroton. I don't know if you can still buy Hydroton, but when I started out 10 plus years ago, Hydroton was almost the only type of light expanded clay aggregate that was available. So I would buy it in these big 50-liter bags. They were super heavy, and I would go to hydroponic stores to get them. Nowadays, you can get LECA from anywhere. You can get it from IKEA. You can buy little bags of it at like Home Depot and stuff. You get lots of it. But I use Hydroton. I like the round ones, and I get the medium level ones where they have big pellets like this, and they have small pellets, and it's just sort of a mix. I haven't actually bought LECA in a long time because I bought like 2 or 3 50-liter bags, and you know that's like 300 pots, 300 orchids, because I have most of my cattleyas in Hydroton. And here, quick pan. So most of my cattleyas are in it, and I know from my database that I have 300 or so cattleyas, and that's a full collection. So basically I buying more Hydroton than I basically have room, so I haven't bought it in a long time. When you get it, you want to wash it because it's dusty, but mine, I basically use mine. So this stuff, you can see there are bits of roots in it, like right here, because I pulled this out of an existing pot, and then I washed it. So I don't bake mine. I bleach mine, about 20% bleach, and I let it soak for like a week to kill all the viruses and bacteria and everything. And then I very carefully rinse out all the bleach, and I try to get rid of as much of the dead like root bits and stuff like here. And I don't get everything, but this stuff is all dead and hopefully has no viruses or anything to spread around. I also have things where, like, see right here, moss grows on it, right? And this moss isn't really dead, so probably needs to be rewashed and rebleached to get rid of it. But this is my Hydroton for the most part. So I washed the bleach out because it makes the pH really, really basic, and that's too high for orchids who prefer a slightly more acidic medium. So I just want to get rid of the bleach so I don't kill the roots. And I think I do a decent job. I don't know how good it is. I'm going to show you some plants that I have recently repotted. It is currently November, and I basically had to repot some orchids because the pots were breaking. So they were doing what's happening with this plant right here, which is basically like the pots, see there, you touch it and it just basically shatters. This one I'm going to try to repot and share my repotting adventure on it. It's going to be really difficult because it's really bound in there, but basically there were 3 flowers on it this morning. This had opened into the shelving, and so I tried to pull it out. I snapped 2 of the flowers off. There's only 1 left. This is a BLC Hawaiian treat. Oh, I'm sorry, no, it's not a Hawaiian treat. It's a Copper Queen. So it's, let's see, it's Toshi Aoki by Richard Muller. And, you know, it's got a lot of dead old back pseudobulbs that are dry that I'm going to try to clean up when I do this. And I'll probably make 2 or 3 divisions of it. It's not the greatest time of year to do it. It's cold. It's not a growing time of year for this orchid, but the pot's collapsing. And, you know, I've already thoroughly abused it by snapping a bunch of flowers off. So I'm going to try to repot it, and I will share it in this video. This here is a Richard Muller cross. It's Golden Peacock that I repot a few weeks ago because its pot was collapsing. And it's in one of the 64-ounce container pots, and I'm trying to grow it up to a specimen size. But the reason I'm sharing it is that it really isn't very happy that I repot it. So let me see if I can pull it out. Better light. So this is a new growth. It was doing fine. It was green when I started the repot. Now you can see it. The tips have turned brown. And if you look at the roots right here, the root tips are dying here. So this is not happy that I disturbed it out of its pot. But again, its pot was collapsing, and so that's why I repot it. But it was quite traumatized, and I tried to be as gentle as possible when I was repotting it to disturb the existing LECA as little as possible. If you look right here, so you can see these roots are still tightly bound to their LECA. I just took it out of its old pot and I put it in the new one. But still quite traumatized, as you can tell by this leaf that's dying right here. You know, as November, I have less than 10 hours of light a day. It's also really cold in here at night. I'm only reaching about 60 degrees. And so it's just not a great time of year to repot, but my collection's really large, so it's unavoidable. I cannot wait till spring, and these pots keep collapsing. And when they collapse enough, I'll show you one that's collapsed a lot, and that also needs to be repot. You just have to repot them because or else you're just going to end up with water everywhere. So this right here is my Ray Thornburg, and you can see right here that the pot has split all the way down to the bottom. So basically, if I water this, there's no water staying in here. It's just coming right out. You can tell the tops of this is broken right off. I'm gonna just basically have to crack the pot off piece by piece and repot this. The only reason I haven't is if you look right here, yep, see? Big bulge, this is right about to pop flowers. Ray Thornburg is a fall bloomer, and so it's a purple fall bloomer, and so I have not repotted because I want to enjoy the flowers on it before I do so, but it really, really needs it. And you can see like the roots have really wrapped themselves around the pot. So it's going to be very traumatized when I crack it out of its pot. And again, it is going into winter, or it is we're a month away from winter, and so it's just not going to be happy. So I might kill it. I have repot things at this time of year before, and sometimes they don't make it to spring. So why do I grow in semi-hydroponics if it has these issues of the pots breaking and such? And the reason is because I originally chose it because one, cattleyas like to dry out. They like to grow hot, they like to dry out, and I'm a really lazy waterer. So I like the idea of having a reservoir, right? You water it and it makes a reservoir, and I don't know if we can see any of my reservoirs here, right? So here's one that has a reservoir right there, and you know, the roots then grow down into the reservoir and you have to water it less. And I really like that. Unfortunately, this whole concept works best if you repot your orchids right when the roots are going into active growth so that they will grow down into the reservoir. So if you have chosen a time of year to do a desperate repot of something that's not ready to do that, then the chances of the new growth dying are very, very high, like in the golden peacock that I showed you. So, you know, I'm trying to repot as gently as possible during this time of year when I do this. But, you know, with this setup, I can have some 300 Cattleya hybrids, and I only have to water in the winter once every 2 weeks. Once a week in the summer, outside of Chicago. So I'm running 60 to 70% humidity in the summer, and I do try to run almost 60% humidity in my growing area in the winter. But I grow in SemiHydro, not because it's the best way to grow, but because I'm lazy and I'm looking for convenience. I wanted an easy way to grow where I could have lots of orchids and I could put the minimal amount of work in. And if you look at first Ray's website, on the website it states that he came up with this concept because he was leaving his orchids alone a lot while he went out to give talks. And so he needed a way where they could be sustained by themselves when he wasn't around. And so that is what attracted me to this system. It's not a miracle growing system, and I don't grow all my orchids in this way. What I really want to do is I want to have orchids that I can basically water all 600 in my collection on the same schedule. And so for each, it has turned out that for each different type of species, I have really needed to have them in a different growing media so that I can put them all on the same watering schedule. And I have Cattleyas that have, or basically Cattleya hybrids, that have never taken to growing in semi-hydroponics. So like this Christelle Smith, Eileen. This is actually the second Christelle Smith I've gotten. I had the BK Orchids cultivar at one point. You can see that it just really never has taken to semi-hydroponics. It's just, it's like sitting on top of it. And I'm probably going to mount it. Mounting is one of new growing formats I've only started using in the last 2 years. And it's just because I have orchids that will not grow in moss or in bark or in semi-hydro in my environment. And so those I've switched to mounts, and I will cover that in a different video of what I think about growing orchids mounted. Here's another orchid that I recently repotted, like I did the Golden Peacock. This is Richard's Bonanza, and its pot was also collapsing. That's really almost the only reason I am repotting orchids in semi-hydroponics right now at this time of year, is just because their pots are collapsing, and you know, I move them and it's just like shattering and plastic everywhere. But with this one, you can see that it has a new growth. It's doing all right. The new growth hasn't blackened. So often, you know, new growth is really, really tender. And so if you disturb it too much, that's one of the reasons, you know, it'll just die. And so you don't want, you know, you don't want to fiddle with this stuff too much, and you don't want it to be too wet. And so, you know, one of the things I did with this one is that while I repotted in, I did not immediately water it. So the LECA went in and it was moist, had been rinsed, but if you look here, there's no water line in this. And so, you know, basically I didn't want to damage any of the roots or anything else, and then, you know, give a wet entry for bacteria to go in. So this one is basically, it got repot, but it hasn't really been watered. And I've just been trying to do, it's sort of like a modified spag and bag. So I've been just trying to keep it humid in here in my growing area. So you can see over here, here's a new growth. And so this orchid, quite clearly, it's putting out its new growth, and then probably it'll do the rooting afterwards, because both of these new growths, you can tell, don't have roots yet. Now, even though this has Richard Muller as a parent, not all the Richard Mullers grow the same way, because both parents influence whether the Cattleya is going to be a root before bloom or a root after bloom. One of the things I do like to do with my orchids in semi-hydroponics is I like to let it grow several leads outside of the pot, like this. There's 2 on this one. And then I just take the division. So I don't repot it completely if the pot's still fine, like this one is. I just take a division right here on the first node that's outside the pot. And then I just take the whole section and just repot it. This one isn't quite ready yet because there's only 2, and I usually like to have at least 3 leads before I do that. This right here is PLC Golden Tang, and this is an orchid where I basically cut it at the beginning of a division that was coming out of a pot, and you can see it actually has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 nodes, so it's very, very strong. All right, but those roots were growing in the air. They were not growing in a pot, and you can see this has been very lightly misted. The roots are not the healthy green color that I would like to see them as, because they were adapted growing in the air, and now I put them into semi-hydro. So we'll have to see if they make it. Again, this one is a root after bloom. You can't really tell right here, but it's a root after bloom orchid. And so right now it has buds, and hopefully it will root after it blooms. So we'll have to come back and check it. This right here is my Petit Prince. It's an orange blooming, cluster blooming Cattleya. It is in a former Cool Whip container, and you can see it's just starting to break. And I've actually had it in this Cool Whip container, I want to say about 6 years. So that's what I'm saying about the food quality plastic lasting a lot longer than other types of plastic. And I don't know, let me back up. So I do know that a lot of food is pasteurized through UV. They use UV to kill all the bacteria in it. So they pass it through like a UV light screen. And so that's possibly why this plastic holds up better against UV, because it's designed to. right? So, or else the food can't be pasteurized before it's taken to the market. All right, so let's see how we can get this out. See, I'm just gonna have to rip all the plastic off. Oh God. Oh, and the worst thing is I'm gonna end up with like pebbles all over the floor. So I think I need to find a location, something to help me keep all the pebbles off the floor. There's like just crap loads of plastic here. Ugh. I don't know if you can still see what's going on. Ugh. I'm literally ripping the plastic off of this to repot it. Oh, look at that. So it's all very tightly packed. Look at the roots on that. So hopefully, I'll have to decide if I'm going to divide it at all. I mean, I was thinking I'd divide it, but oh my gosh. Oh, I'm getting water all over everything. Great. Yay. Oh, I just ripped a root. Look, poor root. It's dead now. So that's the other thing, is all the roots are very attached here. Oh, good Lord. All right, more ripped roots. More ripped roots coming right off right here. All right, there we go. It's coming out of its pot. There we go. So now it's out of its pot. And this is pretty tight inside here. You can see like it's still holding the forms. I think I'm just going to try to put it into a new pot. Though I'm going to try to clean up some of, just because it'll be the least amount of trauma, because I've already traumatized it terribly by ripping roots apart. I'm just going to put it into a larger pot. I could take what amounts to 3 divisions, or divide this into 3 pieces. I started right here on this, but you can see this has already been detached. I cut it off right there. The problem is so this pseudobulb's pretty much a goner. You know, it's lost its leaf, it's turning yellow, but it has one root that is going all the way back into the medium. So I have to choose between pulling it out, which it's pretty firmly placed, or just cutting it and taking it as a loss. And so while, like over here, you can see like this rhizome's all dead, it's coming out, and now it's alive over here, and I could take another division. It has the same problem where a lot of these are in the LECA, and I don't think I want to disturb the LECA enough to pull this piece out, so I'm going to leave it. But, you know, really right here, I can't really take the, like, most of this division is not attached. See, all these roots were outside of the pot, but this one right here is snugged into the pot. And this is what makes growing, this is my least favorite part about growing in semi-hydro, is that basically it's really hard to separate an orchid that's doing well in it. Because if you want to separate this piece, then you have to, you know, dislodge all the LECA down here, right, which the roots have been very happy and they've wrapped themselves around, and it's just, you know, it's not going to come out. It's like wrapped tight. See, it's really in there. And so I'm probably going to have to cut it if I want this piece. So that's a downside. Stuff is growing well. It's really hard to repot. Okay, so I didn't want to break up the giant, root-bound LECA block. And so I did sacrifice that root. I cut it off, and then I actually took that senescing pseudobulb off as well because it wasn't contributing anything. So here is the division piece, only a little injured. You can see the little black right there from it having been banged up against stuff. And so now I can pot this up by itself, or in SemiHydro, or I could give it to somebody. And then over here is my Copper Queen now in one of those 128 ounce containers, deli containers, ice cream containers, frozen food storage containers. And all I have to do now is just put in my clean LECA, like right here, and it's ready to go. And hopefully we'll check in on it at some point in the future, and it will be alive. So I'm obviously not going to get rid of my division of this until I know that my repot of my Copper Queen has survived. So that's how I grow in semi-hydroponics and how I repot. And I think I've covered everything about my growing with them, including how often I water, like once a week in the summer, and maybe every 2 to 3 weeks in the winter, and the type of plastic that I use and the type of LECA that I use. If there are any questions, you can leave them in the comments.